But let's shift now to our trending topic. There is a cultural phenomenon film called Parasite. Bong Joon-ho's latest film, for those of you that aren't familiar, he is a director out of Korea. He has made such creative and quirky films like Snowpiercer or Okjao, and his latest really is quite the ringer. We have all seen it. We are going to spoil the film for you. So if you haven't watched the film, what are you doing with your life? Get it together, go see Parasite, and then come back and listen to our dissection and discussion of the film.
Yes.
But let's first just kind of really just simply start off by telling me, what did you think of the film? Emma Kate.
Honestly, it was way better than I thought it would be. I didn't know much about it going into it, which actually I think was an advantage. Because subtitled movies are different, but I enjoy learning about other cultures when that happens. And anyway, there were just so many twists and turns, and some that were somewhat expected, and then others where I was like, whoa, what just happened right there? So I would highly recommend seeing this movie.
Frank.
I thought it was an incredible movie. It reminded me of Us a little bit. But I had a very bizarre experience thanks to my friend Emma Kate.
Here we go.
Because we had planned on seeing this movie together, and
I think her ADHD brain struck again.
No.
Well, no, I'm just not important to her anymore. But
there it is.
Yep.
There it is.
But you refer back to our podcast on The Mandalorian, I have what's called an insecure attachment, or an anxious attachment, rather. And I've never seen a movie by myself.
Aww.
In my life, I never have. And only recently was I able to have a meal by myself. So I'm getting used to this. But Emma Kate just shoved me into the deep end of the ocean. And
deep end of the
didn't
ocean.
even reply to my text. Are we going? Are we going? I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do this for the podcast. And I go into the theater, and I got there early, so I was the first one to sit down. I'm like, wow, this really is lonely. And people came in, and I heard, friends talking to each other, and I'm like eating my popcorn. Oh, I'm going to watch this movie by myself. So that's sort of the foundational moment. And I go in and see this movie, and it was completely overwhelming, super smart, didn't see some of it coming. And then I walked out of the theater and had nobody to really talk to about it.
Can I talk now, please?
And then, it was a good day.
So fun fact, Frank saw a movie by himself for the first time, and so did I. So be quiet.
The difference is one didn't broadcast it on our podcast.
Well, the difference is I was forced into this. By a friend.
Oh my
who
gosh.
has deserted me.
At 3:50 p.m. that day, let the record be shown, that I actually did text and say, oh no, I'm so sorry. I forgot, which was true. And then I ended up seeing the movie by myself. And so did our producer.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan Hedderly saw it at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's okay to do things on our own.
Yes, it
and
is.
I even apologized.
Yes.
But here we are.
But it's a good movie.
Here we are. Wow.
I really loved this movie. I thought this movie was fantastic, creative, suspenseful, funny. It was a funny movie. How are we doing over there, Emma?
I'm okay. I'm just laughing.
Yeah, you're just enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of explore more of the psychology found in this film, because it is there's a lot of themes and there's a lot of social commentary that's going on in this film that I think it does in a lot of creative ways. Some are very direct and overt, but others are more subliminal and symbolic. But when you think about Parasite, and then along with the recent Rian Johnson film Knives Out, which I saw, which is a great film, by the way, and then earlier in the year, Frank, you referenced Jordan Peele's Us, that it seems like right now modern film is exploring the socioeconomic status and the growing divide amongst race, status, and privilege. So what's your guys' take on why we're getting this onslaught of social commentary in the here and now?
I think it has been growing over decades of the division of wealth in our culture, and the haves and the have-nots, and seeing people being able to work a job, wife being able to stay home, versus a couple doing 2 jobs each, trying to eke out a living, having to commute, and not having what they see online and not having what they see in TV shows. And there's this disparity between the haves and the have-nots, which I liken to the French Revolution. And it's pretty scary right now because, as in us, the people above didn't see the people below. And in our society, I think that that's still the case, but really the people below see us and are getting increasingly angry about it, and it's rich fodder for the film industry, I think.
Which honestly is 100% understandable. Like for Parasite, one of the scenes that really struck me was towards the end when they're having the birthday party, and it's just this very impromptu gathering, and it's a picnic, and it is beautifully orchestrated. And the main one of the 2 main families, so we've got the Park family, which is the affluent family, the wealthy, and then we've got the Kim family, which is the poorer individuals. And the son from the Kim family is upstairs looking out at the picnic that's been formed, and he says, you know, can I fit in with this? They're all so elegant and perfect, essentially. And, you know, I really, that moment struck me because what would have been the most lavish, luxurious, wonderful thing for the Kim family was just a casual event for the Parks. And just that lack of awareness, I think, the lack of even empathy for the fact that there are things in people's lives going on that you just have no idea about, was really startling, along with that sense of power.
Well,
so,
go ahead.
I think, and there's a lack of self-awareness among the wealthy, but I thought it was really interesting to see the lack of awareness of the people in poverty, because I look at the lives of the rich family and I think, ugh, you know, there's a part of me at one point that really kind of wanted that. But then I look back at the family that lived underground, and they just would sit around and laugh and drink their Sprite or whatever that thing was called, and make jokes, and that seems so much more appealing. And it was so pitiful to me to see them get to this stage, and for the son to say one day, I'm going to give up education, I'm just going to pursue money. I'm going to pursue money. And it's just this cycle. And they've lost sort of what it meant to have family, I think.
But I think you always want what you don't have.
Yes.
And it's more about being present in the current moment. And if you don't have enough means to provide for your family, of course you're not gonna, you might have more stress and difficulty. And then it's like, once you, I think there was another scene where the Kim family was sitting in the Park family's living room, and they were just like drinking and eating all their food.
Making a
and
mess.
yeah, and they were
Right-
just like
right before
wrecking
the-
it.
It
right
was
before
hilarious.
the big reveal that really turns the film. But I want to go back to what you were talking about with the son, the tutor, and he looks down on that party, very lavish. He says, "Do I fit in?" And the daughter, the girl, the teen girl that he's tutoring, says, "Yeah." But you sort of see in her facial expression, her tone, that it never occurred to her to even ask such a question, because she's never had to ask that question. And that really kind of is a great example of what privilege oftentimes presents, is this lack of self-awareness or other awareness, that there's really a lot of what we often coin microaggression, which is oftentimes unintentional slights that can really devalue or demean other people through behaviors and attitudes that they don't even recognize as happening. You get the example of the son's birthday party was ruined by the storm, and it's an inconvenience, and they have to come home, and this young boy has to have his sleep out in his tent on the lawn. But for the Kim family, their entire home is washed away.
Mm-hmm.
And because the birthday party of the wealthy Park family has been ruined, they do that impromptu birthday party the next day, and they call up all of their workforce to help them out, not recognizing they're in a shelter now with hundreds of other people, and now they're even having to scrounge and fight for clothing to wear, which then goes back to one of the reoccurring themes of the microaggression, which would be the wealthy father, the patriarch Park, who comments on odor and smell.
That was hilarious.
So now you get to the party,
Or
and
not.
he probably has some very mildewy or kind of odorous clothing because he's gotten it at a shelter, and he keeps not recognizing of how such a devaluing and demeaning behavior that is. And up until the very end, the movie, I think, does a really good job of not painting this like overly vilifying the wealthy family and deifying the Kim family, the impoverished family, that they both show some admirable or likable traits, and they also show some character flaws. But you can see with the Kim father, the driver, how over time the absorption of all those microaggressions and slights and devaluing gets to him to where he snaps in a very visceral and violent way.
And I can't help but add, I think one of the pieces that really added to him losing it was playing into coercive power, where there's a scene that seemed kind of degrading to Mr. Kim, the poor father, where they had to dress up as Indians, which was one of the Park, the youngest son. He was obsessed with the Native American culture at the time and wanted to have this sort of, I don't know, takedown. And the father, Mr. Park, reminded him, he said, you're getting paid extra for this, know your place, essentially. And he just looked at him with this face where I was like, oh, he wanted to just punch him. And then things happened.
I think he would have preferred a punch at that point versus a fatal stabbing.
A knifing.
And
Is that appropriate?
really added to the movie because this is Korea. They wouldn't have guns. So it's going to make it even more visceral that you're going to have to do this hand-to-hand combat.
Well, and I think that's also a point in the film where the film director, Bong Joon-ho, I believe is his name, that he elevates this social commentary beyond merely Korean economics, because he uses basically the origins of America to reinforce this idea of wealth and affluence is parasitic, that you basically thrive off of the means or labor of others. And in order to stay there, and you see this with the Park family, they have to continually exploit or use other people to stay in their status quo. So we can think about that a little bit in terms of the theme of social mobility with this movie, because in a lot of ways, just even the landscape reinforces that idea of upward mobility. They live upward. You always see the Kim family walking up. There's always stairs. When they leave for the day, they go down the stairs, right? Even in the secret bomb shelter beneath the basement, you go down and down, that it kind of reinforces this idea of, in order to stay on top, once you get there, you want to stay there. You don't want to lose your power or privilege. It's got to be on the backbone of other people.
Well, and I have a question. I thought during the monsoon or the deluge and the water is just filled with feces, I thought that was pretty symbolic too. But for the woman to sit on the toilet and smoke the cigarette and crap is just flying up under her, I looked at this and I thought that seems very symbolic of something, but I couldn't figure it out.
Well, if you think about both the rain and sewage, it's coming from
everywhere,
the upper echelon down to them. So everything they deal with, all of the trash and the leftovers and the waste that other people is afforded to their nice, lavish lifestyle. I think it's also interesting in that scene where the great reveal is that the old maid's husband has been living secretly in a bomb shelter for 4 years, that as soon as that they have other people in their same position, they are fighting each other for the small scraps, so that even that upward mobility, it's not just fighting to move up. You have to fight competitively for the little bit that's available amongst the lower impoverished.
But back to the toilet. Was that just funny, or was there something more to it?
I mean, think about it. Honestly, she's just completely defeated. She's sitting there. Her entire house is flooded with literal poop water.
Yeah.
She's on top of a toilet, and the toilet is even overflowing.
It's
Poop is coming through the window.
It's because they're at the very bottom. There's nowhere else for that to
Yeah.
drain.
No, I know, I know that, but I just thought.
No, but symbolically, like the family, they are at the lowest. Like
Okay.
even their own waste can't go down somewhere.
got it. Okay.
It's
They're,
there.
Okay.
It's the worst possible place you could be in.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say now, but
We're just talking about both of the families now fighting over the making space for both. And there was plenty of space, right? They could have lived there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, when I think of this movie, I think about how there's so many parallels. So we're obviously getting at the classism, but even you could relate this to business, right? Like, so, let's say you've got two corporations that are at a bid for somebody who's able to provide wealth and money, and you try to compete with that person. And so, I guess I just think about so many pieces with power, so many pieces with just that lack of self-awareness where, particularly with our practice, we try to bring everybody up where it's, if we don't have a client that we can accept, then we try to give it to, help that family
Yes.
through somebody else. And that is just not the way this works and in a lot of ways in the real world. So.
Well, in the movie Knives Out, and I don't want to talk too heavily about that, both of you haven't seen it, but one of the themes about that film is one of the characters played by Don Johnson is always talking about how he values the American dream, which is when somebody starts at the bottom with nothing and they're able to make something of themselves on their own blood, sweat, and tear and labor. And then that movie really deconstructs that argument by basically showing this wealthy family, they all had $1 million cushion to start off with, right? So the myth of the American dream is often promoted by the wealthy down to the lower class, and in a lot of ways, it kind of keeps them stuck in that status. And so this idea, but both of these films really, they explore classism, but that it's not the only component, because we look at both of these families, the Park family and the Kim family, but it's really about their attitudes. It's really about their character and their morals as much as it is their means and lack of means. That, I think the overall principle of this film is everybody is parasitic.
Yes.
Right? They're all exploiting others, or they're all using other people. And so that in a lot of ways, people to different degrees, obviously, I don't want to suggest it's equal, but they can be trapped in their status because their value system and their morals are corrupt. And then whether or not that system itself is corrupt, so you just start to kind of mirror a capitalistic, consumer mentality, or whether fear of losing your status and privilege, fear of never being able to move upward kind of corrodes your morals and values to the point where you betray them. I mean, because these families towards the end, they're both showing cracks in their character. Yes. Now, Frank, you talked about the ending. So I want to mention about this ending and talk a little bit about how do we believe then in the American dream, or this belief of self-determination, that really with persistence and determination, you really can, make a better life for yourself despite your means or where you begin. The end of this movie, the son is writing a letter and saying it out loud for the audience to hear about how he plans to go back to college, earn a lot of money to where he can buy the house, and then his father, who is now hiding in the basement, can be set free. And then the movie cuts. You see that he's reading the letter. You see a flash forward. It's not real. Then the movie cuts. But then a song plays. And what I learned was that this song is sung by the actor who portrayed the son. That's
Oh, wow.
And the song is basically, it was originally titled 564 Years, which the director estimated is that how long it would take him to earn the money
Wow.
to buy that house. So this idea of having this hopes and dreams and idealism, and it's not particularly rooted in reality. So what do you guys think about what I've always heard my entire life, which is blood, sweat, and tears and persistent, you can be whatever you want to be. How accurate is that for modern America? And what do you think people truly do need to make a better life for themselves in whatever capacity.
Well, I mean, I've seen people in this practice, minority, coming from a different station of life, do it. You did it. A couple other people here have done it at Southeast Psych. And I think it's doable, but it's not a level playing field whatsoever. It's not even close. It was easy for me. I mean, I barely had to try. But I think that's a really complicated question. It depends on your education and who you've been surrounded by, and so many variables and factors. And many of these people are being pushed down by what I call oligarchy of America. There's this wall that says, no, this is for us, this is for us. We'll manage all the money and we'll throw you crumbs.
Well, but I think it's good that, you have some self-awareness of the fact that things were easier for you. And I think that's important for a lot of people. Like, I know for a fact that, I had advantages in my life that other people haven't had. And at the same time, and I think this is where it's important to be delicate. I think a mindset really is important. And I think having the belief that you can achieve is needed. But I also feel like sometimes we have an expectation on what we want, and life doesn't follow through on that. And it's not fair. It's not. And that's just, unfortunately, how the world works. And I wish it wasn't that way.
Well, it has for 5,000 years, and it always will, as far as I'm concerned.
And I think my hope, though, because there's a difference between empathy and compassion. And I know I talk a lot about this, but like empathy is that you can really relate and hope, and wish the best for somebody. But when you have compassion, it's actually you taking action to try to ease the suffering of somebody else that you see. And so, if you are lucky enough to find a mentor in your life, that is something that is really amazing because they will open up doors for you. I think, all of us in this room have had mentorship in some capacity that's really elevated us. And so the more you can put in the hustle to get to know people and network and move and do what you can, that's what matters. If that was your question, to try to say, how do you help yourself? But it's not easy. It sucks.
Well, I mean, I fundamentally believe in the American dream, but I also believe that anybody can win the lottery. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to win the lottery. And the odds and statistics suggest that the majority of people will not. I would be surprised if I could meet anybody that really started out with impoverished means and status and was able to successfully move up, where they couldn't point out dozens and dozens of people that took a chance. Took a chance on them, gave them an opportunity where there were other people that they could take an opportunity with that were equally knowledgeable or competent or had the potential. And so it really is about community. It is about helping others. I think that's one of the unique indictments that I don't fully understand about this film, is that we typically think of Asian culture as not being so individualistic. And yet here you have a film that's really kind of highlighting or exposing that consumerist, individualistic mindset and how it maybe has really eroded some of the traditional Asian themes of community and collectivism. And we as America, it's hard-pressed to not say that we are a completely individualistic society and community, to where it's very easy to drive by countless homeless people each and every day that are asking for help, and just it's normalized that they're out there, and it's normal for us to drive by. And I do it myself, so I am certainly not removing myself from that equation. But if it really is, like if I can really stop and say, I got to where I got not just because of tenacity or intelligence, but also people taking a leap of faith on me, people taking a chance on me, and then another person taking a chance on me, and another person taking a chance on me. The question I have to ask myself is, who in my life am I doing that for as well? Giving them a chance and an opportunity that without me, they may find themselves not having that platform. The movie basically starts because the son's friend vouches for him. Otherwise, this movie would have never gone anywhere. They never would have had a chance to meet the Park family. That you need somebody oftentimes to vouch, because education, it can really help, but oftentimes it's not enough. It can't get you through the door when 50,000, 100,000 other people have that same level of education.
That's right.
And it's certainly not a simplistic solution because it is not a simplistic problem, but we would definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts about Parasite and some of the themes that we've talked about here in today's episode. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank Podcast. This is also the last episode of this year. What a year, Frank, right? What a year, right, Emma Kate? Both of you had some major changes in this year.
What a year. Almost
I don't know
as
what
if
to
we're
say.
going in opposite directions.
Really, it's the beginnings of some things and it's the ends of others. But that's going to do it for this year of the Shrink Tank Podcast. I'm Jonathan Hederly, signing off with Emma Kate Wright and Frank Gaskell here in Charlotte. Tell your friends about us. Make it a great week and a happy new year.